20% of the people out there on the police department, and most police departments, they are geared to go with the flow. If you have good training, good recruitment, number one, good training, good supervision, good discipline, and then if you have good retention policies, good public policy, then that 20% will straighten up, fly right, and get on the side with the 60%. Now, any chief that has 80% of his department taking care of serious business, that's a blessed police chief, a blessed council, and a blessed community. But let me tell you, darling, there are about 20% of the police department, police officers on every police department, whether there's a 6-man police department or a 600-man police department, that ain't worth a damn. They should not be there. They're there for the wrong reasons. They bring the majority of the harassment complaints, the majority of the brutality complaints. They do most of the damage in communities. And when a chief is new, it's difficult for him to discover who they are. But a chief who comes through the rank, like your chief has, Thomas Michael Burns, he knows who they are. And when they let them stay there, that's very poor retention, and it wreaks havoc on the community. Now, so that's why I chose use of force, and I knew that I wasn't going to just jump out there and say something. I knew that anything that I was going to say, I needed to investigate it, research it, and get the facts. And then the institution gave me a foundation to launch from.
Now, having said that, and as we broach the subject of your report and your finding, one of the things that you said to us last time, which I think is very important, is that, and I think it's true, there's almost like a what do you call it, band of brothers between police officers. And one of the things you said to us, you know, if you could, one of the first things you're going to always do is you're going to say something good about the police department. But, you know, when there is wrong, there is, there is wrong. And so one of the things I want to say to our listeners, this is coming from what I call within, in terms of a person with a law enforcement police background unveiling what you found in this report.
Absolutely. See, because there is a fraternity among police, but even more serious than that, most communities have allowed a subculture to exist in their police department. And police officers have molded themselves into a us versus they situation. Because people oftentimes don't understand what police officers are up against. It's difficult being a police officer. There is nothing easy about gearing yourself up and walking through a community for 8 hours and trying to maintain peace. That is a very difficult situation. Because the very people that you are trying to help in many cases don't want to help themselves. And there are some violently opposed people out there who's working against you. So you've got to constantly make split-second decisions about who's good, who's bad, and who's indifferent. And you got to try to treat all of them decent and professionally, even though that you don't know whether they're good, bad, or ugly. So that's difficult. So police officers have a tough job. Community people has to be protected from themselves first, and then from everything else around them. And so that's difficult, because when you start dipping into people's family business, they look at you with a jaundiced eye. You know, who in the heck do you think you are coming up in my house trying to tell me what to do and what not to do? But now, above all of that, the police officers have to be so well trained, and it takes a good chief for that. It takes a good chief for that. It takes a good council for that. Council people are basically totally unaware of what police officers are about. They get elected from their schools and from their jobs and from the corner store over there as a merchant. And they come into that political position and they declare that I got the power. Well, they do in fact have the power, but they don't have no knowledge about what police officers do and the subculture that exists over there among those police. So there develops a language from that police culture that council people generally don't even understand.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, police officers are able to do whatever they want to do basically based on their cultural expectations and norms, and oftentimes talk the language that completely skirts what the community's needs and expectations are.
Now, given that background, not only your personal background, the background and just the overall structure of police departments and your 60-20-20, let's fast forward to where we are now, or not really now, 6 months, 7 months ago. How did you come to investigate the Macon Police Department? What brought you to Macon?
Well, I have a friend here in Macon who knows me and my reputation.
Mm-hmm.
And he saw black police officers being fired as if it was going out of style.
Mm-hmm.
And so he knew Officer Calloway.
Mm-hmm.
And Calloway, when the chief fired Calloway, he kind of did what the police officer in Montgomery did with Miss Rosa Parks. He actually arrested the wrong woman.
Mm-hmm.
And what Sheriff Jim Clark did in Selma with Mrs. Amelia Boynton Robinson.
Mm-hmm.
The Sheriff Clark arrested the wrong woman.
Mm-hmm.
Chief Thomas Michael Burns had gotten away so long with doing it his way, which was wrong, but he's been doing it so long that he apparently thinks it is right. He fired Officer Joseph Calloway.
Okay.
And Calloway happened to be a man that does not have a bit in his back.
Mm-hmm.
He stands up straight. He speaks a clear language. He says what's on his mind, but he means what he says and says what he means. And so my grandmother told me that there's a theory out there that you can mess over some of the people some of the time, but you sure enough just can't mess over everybody all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So when he messed with Calloway, Calloway apparently stood back and said, wait a minute.